All right, how was your lunch? Good. Nice to see all of you here.
There's, one seat over here.
I think the microphone is a bit loud because it's rundgång. Don't know what that is in English.
No, me neither. Is mine all right?
Reverb, thank you.
Is mine all right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Should work fine.
All right. So, back when I had my first project in sustainability, I was pretty proud about coming from Sweden, because I thought that we in the Nordics had it all figured out. And as you could see earlier, I guess we're pretty good at energy, but yeah. Anyway, I went into the role as a service designer, exploring how to create circular hubs out of retail stores. And I have to get this straight from the start. I was never that into sustainability, to be honest. The word or the abbreviation CSR made me quite tired, and I wasn't motivated by it at all. But what really interested me was circular economy, because I had gotten into it in my master's, and I thought it was a really interesting challenge from a human behavior perspective. And it also really annoyed my economist mother. But anyway, 2 months into this project, I started feeling confused. And I had a really big problem scoping what I was doing because it was spilling into everything. And everywhere I turned around, it felt like I was really walking into a wall. No, 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 we can't do that, we can't do this, no, it won't be approved. So I started feeling tired, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I had to step away, basically. I finished the project, but with quite mediocre outcome, to be honest. And I didn't want to work in sustainability for a while. I felt like, no, I'll just focus on service design and become a really good service designer instead. But then a year later, I had the opportunity to come back to circular business transformation, and I thought, let's give it another try. But this time, something was completely different for me. The organization where I was supposed to work on this project was welcoming the project so much more. We had so many more sponsors, and that in turn changed the likelihood of success for our project. And in the end, we proved the business case, and we rolled it out to 70 markets. I realized that what I was feeling and experiencing was how a collective mindshift change really impacted a big system, in this case, the retail industry. People were awakening to circularity and circular economy and all the benefits to it, and that in turn made our project a success. My name is Meyersson. I am a business designer and service designer at CGI. I also serve as competency lead for circular economy and regenerative business model innovation. Long title, but yeah. And I really believe that if we can shift our minds, start thinking about sustainability in a different way, we can accomplish so much. I'm super happy to be here.
Nice. And now you can hear me as well. Today we're going to talk about the 3 R's. And the 3 R's is not a concept that Ruth and we have in any way, developed on our own, and we cannot take any credit for it. But the 3 R's stems from a circularity model, which focuses on how we should think about our resources. So in today's session, we will specifically focus on how to rethink, repurpose, and redesign. Tech and digitalization can get us very, very far. But as Ruth just mentioned, we believe that it starts with us as individuals. We need to understand our own impact and how we can shift our minds and others into sort of accelerate this into the necessary transition. But before we deep dive into this a bit more, I just need to give you a little of a background. I've had sustainability on my mind for many, many years, and I would say that my main role model is my dad. And I'm going to give you a quite funny, at least for me, story about him. Because we had a discussion in his kitchen a couple of years ago, and you have to realize that he's 67 years old. But we sat there and we talked about sustainability, and seeing as he's an engineer, he told me that he had done his old calculations on carbon emissions and fossil fuels. And I was like, all right, yeah, fine. You did, I'm sure you did that. But the actual thing that he wanted to do was to post a video on him explaining this on YouTube. And you know, I was 26 and quite embarrassed by the idea of having my dad online. And I was a bit hesitant to telling him how to do it. But he wanted to get active, and I told him pretty much that, Dad, you do not have the correct platform for it. You have no audience, and there is no one who's going to listen to what you have to say. And I will get back to you in a second why this is relevant for rethink, repurpose, and redesign. My name is Hanne. I work as a business consultant, and I'm the practice lead for sustainability and ESG at CGI. And as I said, I've had sustainability on my mind forever. I did my first high school paper on the negative effects of textile production, more from a national economics perspective. And I'm also very super happy to be here. All right.
But before we get started, as you hear, she's been into sustainability for a long time. I'm pretty new into it. And we wanted to address that because we have different perspectives on how to solve sustainability issues, but we work in the same team at the same company, and we drive the practice forward with that, having those different perspectives. And we wanted to say that because I think in sustainability, it's not one way, it's not one solution fits all. And we need everybody to come with great ideas and their own innovations to solve it. So we'll tell you things today, but it's for you to think about it and what you want to do with it.
Yes. So starting off with the rethink, for me, rethinking is accepting and understanding our own impact. And sort of accept the fact that we may not be as sustainable as we believe. This may be contradicting to what they just talked about in the main stage, I understand that, but that was from an energy innovation perspective. And I mean, even though we have a lot of sort of renewable energy, we are good at recycling, and we do many other initiatives and have done for a long time here in Sweden. And we are oftentimes mentioned as frontrunners. But however, our numbers and our statistics, they are very often including the domestic production rather than the imported consumer goods. So, I want you to think of one thing. These are the overshoot days globally. And for those of you who do not know what an overshoot day is, it's the date in which the world's resources would have been used up if everyone were to live as the people within these countries respectively. So it ranges from February 10th, Qatar, until December 20th with Jamaica. And I want you to give me, or you don't have to yell it out loud, but I want you to think of a date. Where would you put Sweden on this map? Let's see if anyone has the correct answer. It is April 3rd. April 3rd is Sweden's overshoot day, according to these calculations and this method. That means in just 2 weeks, Sweden will hit our overshoot day, meaning that if everybody on this planet were to live the way we do, we would run out of the world's resources in 2 weeks' time. So one important aspect here is to understand how can we rethink our existence without conflicting our standards of living. And this is key, because Ruth and I, we are not here to tell you that you shouldn't live perhaps exactly the way you do right now. We are not telling you that you should lower your standards of living, but we need to understand that the things that we do, it also contributes to a lot of climate issues that we, together with many other countries in the Western world, of course, we won't be the ones to see the effects right away. So we need to find new ways of doing what we're doing.
And with that said, why are we not adapting? I mean, the climate topic has been up for ages here. What's going on? Why aren't we already ahead of this? I can't answer all of that, but what I can do is to tell you what I've learned working with human behavior in retail industry. And the first thing that I've learned is that we're addicted to consumption. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't buy groceries. That's not it. It's something else that I'm pointing to. Buying things for happiness is an addiction. And now you might think, but I don't buy things to get happy. But buying things for a new occasion or to make us feel good, that's the same thing. And I'm not, I'm standing here also, I also consume things. But that's important to understand because it gives us somewhat an idea of how we've differentiated our lives in recent years. And buying things is to make us happy. I mean, it's the oldest thing in the book, like going out to buy a fancy car, and maybe you don't think that you would do that, but the thing is that most of us do. And it turns out that buying things for happiness does not contribute to our happiness. It doesn't. So actually, what makes us happy is social relationships, belonging, and selfless acts. And that's not me saying that. That's Laurie Santos from Yale, who's done a lot of research on this. So we don't actually need to go hunting for that acne bag or that fancy car. That's not what's going to make us happy. And if we know that, we can start observing our own behavior and rethinking it. But on top of that, we also build our identity with what we consume. This is something called consumer culture theory. And I tested this on my sister a couple of years ago when I first read about it. So you buy things to fit into a certain category of people. People I admire or people who I think, yeah, these are nice. And she discarded me then and there and said, nope, I just buy the things that I like. And then I thought to myself, is that why all of your friends have the same kitchen chair, even though it's crazy, expensive, and uncomfortable? I love my sister, she's amazing. But this is what we all do, and I definitely do it as well. But I've really tried to become conscious of how I do it and why I do it. So I'm not standing here telling you don't care about your appearance or don't have a nice home. Definitely not. What I am asking you to do is to get curious of how you fulfill the need to feel belonging and to be happy. Because if you can rethink that, we can get a long way with changing the way we consume. And if we realize that, then we also realize that it's perfectly possible or plausible for us to maintain the same level of happiness even though we switch to living more sustainably. And that's pretty great. So I wanted to share another thing that I found, which I think is also really amazing, and that is that health, like initiatives for climate, often correlates with benefits for health. And we're going to do a little bit of an experiment now. So, for example, what do I mean? Well, biking to work, it's not only better for less pollutions, but it's also good for your physique. And having less cars on the road, for example, lowers the probability of asthma. So now you're going to get 2 minutes. I want you to say hello to your neighbor and introduce yourself. And then I want you to discuss a few things in your life that are both good for the climate and your health. And you have 2 minutes starting now. Det är jag.
Är det jag?
Ja, det är jag. Now you have about 10 seconds left. Okay. All right, I'm super ready to hear some of your answers. Okay. Thank you. I'm super excited to hear some of your answers. So I'm going to ask right here. Did you think of anything?
Yes, we did. One was eating food that's locally produced. So better for the climate, less emissions with moving, but then also you're eating fresh food, so it hasn't been stored. Probably good for you.
Yeah, nice one. Do we have another example? Anybody who wants to go? What did you guys over here talk about?
We talked about walking.
Oh.
We talked about walking instead of taking the car for like small grocery shopping, and not eating meat. Yes.
Good initiatives. Now you're gonna get 1 more minute, and then I want you to think about or discuss with your partner what's stopping you. Are there things hindering you from doing these things? So 1 minute starting now. All right.
Women in tech.
And again. Can I get some answers? No?
Okay. People. It's my business thing.
All right. The person who did the whistling can start again.
In the corner. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, for next Women in Tech, learn how to do the whistle thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So can I hear from you over here? What did you think or say?
We were discussing like habits, and we discussed habits, and that maybe you haven't really thought about why you do what you do. You just do it because that's the way you always done.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you for that. So to emphasize my point here, now we realize that it's both possible to maintain the same level of happiness while changing to a more sustainable life, but it can also be good for your health. So, pretty great. So, to summarize, I would like you to rethink these things. Become aware of how you consume and why. Relationships, belonging, and selfless acts, that's what's going to make you happy. And being a positive climate force is often good for your health as well. So that's great.
Excellent. And I think that was a good sort of bridge over to the repurpose, because now you've talked about what's actually good for you and why you may not do it. So the next sort of step would be to understand why. And this is what we mean with repurpose. And we may want to zoom out a little bit, because we're not talking about right here, right now. We are sure you all have very good reasons for being in this room right now or at Women in Tech. But we want to focus on the things that you spend your time on in your working life. That is 80,000 hours. Yeah, just for information.
For information.
So why have we decided that earning money is the main goal of our individual selves? And why have we decided that companies should earn a profit? We have, to some extent, decided that profit and growth, that's the end goal of our society. And we are, again, addicted to growth in many ways. But we haven't always been. Before, growth and profit was an idea, was a solution for getting people out of poverty and making people thrive. So perhaps we need to find new ways of purposing our own society and our own lives. And that's basically what you just did in the exercise just now.
So we wanted to give you some examples. So what I've realized last years is that if your company only looks at profits and growth and only measures profit and growth, guess what you're going to get? Profit and growth. And we're going to leave something else behind. And that's people and planet. So I wanted to give you an example of, or two examples really, of two companies that have embedded a higher value than profit in their mission statements as a start. And the first one is SwapFits. I don't know if you know about this, but I definitely do. I live in Copenhagen, and if you have a bike, you have a SwapFit. You don't own your bike, you rent it. And looking at their mission statement, it gives them a lot of room to both develop new services. It doesn't just have to be bikes, but it also makes it possible for them to take into account livable cities. What makes up a livable city? Well, it's not going to be pollution, and it's not going to be a lot of trash everywhere. So they've embedded it. And the next one, I think you're quite familiar with, Patagonia. And I mean, I worked a lot in the retail industry, and you have to admire what Patagonia has done. They've enabled themselves to actually not just become a machine of profit and growth, but actually become a machine of creating a better planet, or improving the planet, basically. That's pretty powerful. And I wanted to show these, and I'm not going to show missions that don't include these, not to step on any toes, but I want to make the point that if we don't incorporate people and planet in our mission statements and what we measure, our success will always be measured on dividends to shareholders. And that doesn't serve its purpose. That's not purposeful. So what I want you to do when you go out of here today is that I want you to think about where you work and what you do. And I want you to find your company's real purpose. What is the need you're fulfilling to your customers? Can you do it in a different way? Or can you use the capabilities you have today to solve a human problem? I guarantee that's a lot more fun to work with. It's really challenging at times, but it keeps you going to work really excited and happy. And being a consultant, I mean, I've had the opportunity really to look into a bunch of different companies and different industries. And what I can tell you is that sustainability is not CSR being put in the corner. Sustainability should be core. It should be center. Because if it's center, I believe we will see a completely different society. And I believe we can make people thrive from just doing that. Because I will emphasize again, I can recycle all I want, and I can stop buying things. But if the companies that provide the things that I need don't quit their fossil fuel dependency, I won't be able to either. And it's really a privilege to be thinking about sustainability. A lot of people in this world aren't even near it. I have that privilege, and I choose to use my privilege this way. So, really, how can you rethink your working hours and the purpose of your company? Instead of just chasing growth and profit, let's repurpose our companies to fill an important role in society. Which leads us to the next and last bit. But evaluate your why and include sustainability already in your mission. And I think that we can come pretty far from just you leaving here today.
Yes. So then we have the last one, we have the redesign. So now we talked about how we can rethink and how we can repurpose, but that leaves us with perhaps the most funny part, perhaps, for some. But before we get into redesign, we want to do some sort of trip down memory lane. We're going to look into the history of plastics. Because back in the days when, food containers, they weren't made up of these small plastic covers. They were made out of metal or glass, and people kept them. People used them to store other things in those containers. You may even have a, milkman coming and getting your milk every day and exchanging it weekly. That's the way we looked at it. So when the plastic industry sort of exploded and we started to mass distribute plastics, people did not understand that they were supposed to throw it away. So they kept the plastics. It ended up being such as marketing slogans telling people that you can fill your trash can. So this is a picture from Time magazine, 1955. Throwaway living, disposable items cut down household chores. So we are not wasteful by nature. That's not the way it was before. But what happened is you see a behavioral change that designers made us do. So marketing campaigns, together with designers who designed these items, they made us change and becoming wasteful. And we believe that you in this room, you have the capacity and the power to actually help with these behavioral changes. Regardless, hopefully not in this way, but the other way around. So we have immense power here to actually change the way that we design things that also is going to lead to some sort of behavioral change, regardless of your products or services. Ruth.
Yes. And, I'm a service designer, so I like to think about how things are designed. But every day, or basically in a year, millions of products are designed to become obsolete. And maybe it's not the first time you think about this, but we design things that are designed to break because it's part of our business model. Warranties don't last that long, so we're forgetting how to repair, mend, and actually take care of the things that we have. We're getting used to, just changing. And we can change that, because it doesn't have to be like that, as in the example. We were taught to behave that way. We can reverse it. And that's why I love to work with service design and business model innovation, because we can do so much other things that are great for the climate and also gives profit. And I love being in that space where you can actually challenge how you fulfill the need. Does everybody have to own a car? Or can we build a service that is so trustworthy that people actually start relying that when I need it, it will be there, but I don't have to own it? And for me, SwapFits is a great example. I'm really not technical as a person, and SwapFits is awesome because I don't have to take care of my bike. And if it breaks, I bring it in and they take care of it for me. So that's an amazing business model that I think is and that's a circular business model. That's why we have this circular. But there's also another type of business model that's regenerative. And I think a really nice example of that hasn't boomed yet, but I'm hoping it will come. It's oat shoes, that when you worn the shoes out, you can plant it and it becomes a tree. That's pretty awesome. So I don't know what products you're working with or services, but can they become a tree? So yeah, those are 2 examples.
They are. And I mean, planting trees, good thing. All right, but the issue with making climate conscious decisions, you don't see the effects right away, right? So if you buy a less expensive product, for instance, you can immediately reckon that you have more money on your cart, which is positive. But what do we do, or how do we feel when we buy products that are perhaps more eco-friendly? We can't really see the effects right away, and we won't know if it has any sort of impact at all. At least that's how I feel. I do buy a lot of sustainable products, I hope, but that's just for my own sort of, the things I perceive as valuable. So, an interesting question, or thought perhaps. What would happen if we, instead of a monetary currency, had CO2 equivalents? This is actually something that I did talk with my dad about many, many years ago, and I'm not sure if any one of you heard of Deconomy, but Deconomy is an impact tech startup, and they have focused on financial tools to tackle climate change in various ways. And they partnered up together with MasterCard and Ålandsbanken and created a completely new credit card where your account is not filled with monetary currency, it's filled with CO2 emissions. It's voluntary, of course. You won't, be forced to use it. But I think this is an excellent example how you can redesign a product to make others rethink. And I was very intrigued when I heard it. I have not started using it yet, but I would love to compete with myself to see. It's sort of like my own personal overshoot day. For how long can I have these CO2 equivalents before I run out monthly? Perhaps the first month I will make it to 1 week. But the second month or the third month, perhaps I'll reach the third and the fourth week, and my personal overshoot day will lower. But this is also quite funny, because this is a part where Ruth and I, we do not agree at all in how we see this.
No, I think, first of all, I don't like to be shamed by my apps. Like, I want them to tell me I'm good. So that would, and I think that it should be on the companies to design sustainably and helping the citizen, because you never know what state anybody's in, or like if they have not enough time, or all of these things. It's great if you can think about it. And I mean, I try to do when I can, but it's I would rather see companies actually designing sustainable stuff from the start and helping me out, so I don't have to think about it all the time.
And I still think it would be funny to just know. Okay, so now we've talked about consumers, and we've talked about different companies redesigning their products, etc. But we have also forgotten about one large player in all of this, and that we happen to be part of a pretty active union working with various sustainability topics. And the European Union, they have accelerated just a couple of years with many different directives and legislation. We have energy efficiency targets, we have CSRD, if you've heard of it, EU taxonomy, etc. And I'm not going to sort of go into the detail of all of those, because there are, of course, many arguments saying that this may not have the effect that we want to anyway. But for me, this is a clear example of someone repurposing and redesigning something. And I mean, by the vision of being front runners, EU is now pushing, or at least emphasizing, companies to find new ways of business, either to rethink and redesign themselves or help others to do it. So now that we've sort of talked about these sort of roles, we're going to get back into the discussion of the roles in just a second. Because hopefully the end game will be that you as a consumer, based on the knowledge that you have from the transparency and the sustainability data, you can make better choices. And now perhaps Ruth is angry with me because I said better choices. But you can decide whether you want to invest or not invest in such a company. You can decide whether you want to purchase or not purchase their products. And you can even decide upon yourself if you want to work at such a workplace, depending on the results, of course. So, talking about these three, we mentioned in the beginning the rethink, the repurpose, and redesign as linear. But now we have already talked about one redesigning may lead to someone else rethinking. So perhaps instead of looking at this from top to bottom or as a linear, we should look at it as a circular loop that continues. Because what we want to highlight is the fact that for one specific topic, I may be in the rethinking phase. Ruth might already be in the redesigning phase. And what she redesigns in another topic may get me to rethink. So it continues. And this is why we are relevant in this discussion, because we are the ones that can rethink or redesign and that then get others to do the same. And I want to end my part of this session with another experiment, very funny, because I want you to think of the roles that you have. We've talked about the consumer, we've talked about the company, and we've talked about EU. How many roles would you say that you have in your everyday life? 1, 2, 5? Because I see myself as a consultant primary, but hopefully I'm also someone's friend. I may or I may not have a partner. And I have other people that I can influence. So if there's one call to action I want to give you today, is to reflect upon these roles and how you can use the rethink, the repurpose, and redesign in other aspects than your sort of professional life. But start there, because that may be where you can make the most impact.
And I kind of think that, or I just have to say that, like most people I meet working in sustainability are women. So I think you already reflect a lot upon this. So here I am asking you once again to reflect on this. No, but I want to tie this back to the start. I saw that in 1 year, an entire industry picked up an idea and actually ran with it. It just took some time to gain that credibility and for people to start believing in it. So I'm asking you to start believing in it and find the amazing innovations that comes with it, because it's a lot of fun and there's a lot of work to do. Understanding and accepting that system change starts with us changing our mindset gives me the strongest anchor in how I work as a consultant and how I live my life. So today, me and Hanne, we want to ask all of you to join us in rethinking how we fulfill our needs and repurposing our companies to serve the many and not the few, and redesign our system to fit within the limit of the planet. Thank you.
Thank you.